A peaceful funeral service, ruthless outlaws seeking revenge, and a dead woman whose secret identity will change everything. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones lying perfectly still, and sometimes death is just another kind of cover story. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit the notification bell. This helps us bring you more powerful stories like this one. The morning sun cast long shadows across Riverside Cemetery as mourners gathered around the mahogany casket of Catherine "Kate" Morrison. The service was small, intimate, exactly what the deceased had requested. Family members in black suits stood beside the grave, their faces etched with grief for the woman they'd lost to cancer just 3 days earlier. Kate's husband, Thomas Morrison, stood at the head of the casket, his weathered hands gripping a folded American flag. After 35 years of marriage, he looked like a man who'd lost half his soul. Their daughter Sarah held his arm for support, tears streaming down her face as the minister spoke about eternal rest and heavenly peace. Kate Morrison was a pillar of this community, Reverend Matthews intoned. A devoted wife, loving mother, and tireless volunteer who touched countless lives through her charity work. What the mourners didn't know was that 3 men in a stolen pickup truck were watching the service from the tree line, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "That's him," snarled Marcus Viper Rodriguez, pointing at Thomas Morrison. "The son of a bitch who testified against our crew in federal court. Cost us 20 years of our lives because of his big mouth." His partner Jake "Razor" Collins checked his .45 caliber pistol. "Boss said to make it public. Send a message to anyone else thinking about cooperating with the feds." The third man, Tommy "Psycho" Adams, laughed coldly. "Nothing says, 'Don't snitch,' like gunning down a witness at his wife's funeral. Old man'll never see it coming." They'd spent 2 weeks planning this hit. Thomas Morrison had been the key witness in the federal case that destroyed the Iron Wolves motorcycle gang. His testimony about seeing the gang's drug operations had sent 15 members to prison, including their president Danny "Reaper" Williams. Now, 3 years later, the surviving members wanted revenge. And they decided that the most brutal message would be delivered at the moment when Thomas Morrison was most vulnerable, saying goodbye to his beloved wife. 30 seconds, Viper ordered, starting the truck engine. "Drive up fast, take out Morrison, and anyone else who gets in the way. No witnesses, no survivors." As the minister concluded his remarks and mourners began tossing flowers onto the casket, the stolen pickup roared out of the trees and across the cemetery grass. The peaceful service erupted into chaos as family members scattered, screaming in terror. "Thomas Morrison!" Viper shouted, leaping from the truck with his weapon drawn. "This is for the Iron Wolves." But as the 3 outlaws approached the gravesite with murder in their eyes, they failed to notice something crucial. The mahogany casket that was supposed to contain Kate Morrison's body was slightly ajar, and from inside came the soft click of a weapon being chambered. The Iron Wolves had made a terrible mistake. They'd attacked the wrong funeral, and the woman they thought was dead was about to remind them why that was the last mistake they'd ever make. Thomas Morrison looked up from his wife's grave to see 3 armed men charging across the cemetery grass. For a moment, he was paralyzed by the surreal horror of the situation. Violence erupting at Kate's funeral, the one place that should have been sacred and safe. "Dad, get down!" Sarah screamed, grabbing her father's arm and pulling him behind a large headstone. The other mourners, Kate's sister, her elderly parents, longtime friends from the community, scattered in all directions. Some dove behind monuments, others ran toward their cars, all of them screaming in terror. "Thomas Morrison!" Viper roared again, firing a shot into the air. "You destroyed our family, now we destroy yours." "Please," Thomas called out from behind the headstone, his voice shaking. "This is my wife's funeral. Whatever you want, we can work it out. Just don't hurt innocent people." Razor laughed harshly. "Innocent? You think ratting out your neighbors makes you innocent? You think hiding behind federal prosecutors makes you safe?" As the 3 outlaws advanced on Thomas's position, none of them noticed the slight movement from inside the mahogany casket. A pale hand emerged first, followed by an arm, then the upper body of a woman who was very much alive. Kate Morrison sat up in her coffin like something from a horror movie, but there was nothing supernatural about what happened next. Her movements were precise, controlled, and deadly professional as she reached for something hidden beneath the white silk lining. The thing about witness protection, she said quietly, though no one could hear her over the chaos, is that sometimes the best way to disappear is to die. Kate Morrison wasn't Kate Morrison at all. She was Special Agent Catherine Mills, FBI, and for 3 years she'd been living deep undercover as the wife of a federal witness. The cancer diagnosis had been fabricated, the death staged, all part of an elaborate plan to flush out the remaining Iron Wolves members who'd been threatening Thomas Morrison's life. The funeral was a trap, and the outlaws had walked right into it. "Where is he?" Psycho demanded, firing another shot that splintered the headstone Thomas was hiding behind. "Come out and face justice, you coward." "I'm right here," Thomas said, slowly standing with his hands raised. "You want me? Fine. But let everyone else go. They have nothing to do with this." Kate watched her husband, not really her husband, but a man she'd grown to genuinely care about during their 3-year cover marriage, offer his life to save strangers. It was exactly the kind of courage that had made him willing to testify against the Iron Wolves in the first place. But Thomas Morrison didn't need to sacrifice himself today, because Special Agent Catherine Mills was about to end this threat permanently. "You know what your problem is," Kate called out, finally revealing herself as she climbed out of the casket. All 3 outlaws spun toward her voice, their faces going white with shock and horror. To them, it looked like a dead woman was rising from her grave to deliver supernatural justice. "Your problem," Kate continued, now fully visible in her white burial dress but holding a .40 caliber Glock with deadly competence, "is that you never learned to research your targets." Viper's gun hand trembled as he stared at the woman who was supposed to be dead. "What the hell?" "Kate Morrison died of cancer 3 days ago," Kate said calmly, her weapon trained on Viper's center mass. "But Special Agent Catherine Mills is very much alive. And you 3 just committed about 17 federal crimes, including threatening a federal witness and attacking a federal agent." The peaceful cemetery had become a battlefield, with mourners cowering behind headstones while a dead FBI agent faced down 3 armed outlaws who just discovered they'd been played. Surprise!
The 3 Iron Wolves outlaws stared at Kate Morrison, Special Agent Catherine Mills, in complete shock.
Their simple revenge killing had just become a nightmare scenario involving a federal agent who'd apparently faked her own death. "That's impossible," Razor whispered. "We saw the obituary. The funeral arrangements.
You've been dead for 3 days.
Death certificates are surprisingly easy to forge when you have FBI resources," Kate replied, keeping her weapon steady. "Amazing what you can accomplish with the right paperwork and a cooperative coroner." Viper was the first to recover from the shock. "I don't care if you're FBI, CIA, or the ghost of Christmas past. You're still outnumbered 3-1. "Actually," Kate said with a slight smile, "I'm not." From behind various headstones throughout the cemetery, 6 figures in black tactical gear emerged. FBI agents who'd been posing as mourners, groundskeepers, and even the hearse driver. Each one had a weapon trained on the 3 outlaws. "This is FBI agent Sarah Chen," one of the mourners announced, dropping her elderly grandmother disguise. "You're surrounded. Drop your weapons and surrender immediately." Thomas Morrison stared in amazement as the woman he'd been married to for 3 years revealed herself to be the center of an elaborate federal sting operation.
"Kate."
"Agent Mills. Who are you really?" "I'm someone who's been hunting the Iron Wolves for 5 years, Kate replied, never taking her eyes off the 3 criminals. "Your testimony put 15 of them in prison, but we knew the survivors would come for revenge eventually. So we gave them a target they couldn't resist." Psycho looked around wildly at the FBI agents emerging from concealment throughout the cemetery.
"This is bullshit."
"You can't use fake funerals to trap people." "Actually, we can," Agent Chen corrected. "It's called a federal sting operation. And you 3 just confessed to conspiracy to commit murder in front of multiple federal agents." Viper's face twisted with rage as he realized how completely they'd been outmaneuvered. "You set us up." "You set yourselves up," Kate said coldly. "When you decided to threaten a federal witness, you became federal targets. When you planned to commit murder at a funeral, you became federal priorities. And when you came here today with weapons and murder in your hearts, you became federal prisoners." The fake funeral had been planned for months. Every detail designed to lure the remaining Iron Wolves members into a trap where they would reveal themselves and commit crimes that would put them away forever. The cancer diagnosis was cover for the operation setup, Kate explained as FBI agents moved to surround the outlaws. The death was staged to create the perfect bait. And this funeral was designed to be irresistible to anyone seeking revenge against Thomas Morrison. Razor looked at the FBI agents closing in from all sides and made a desperate calculation. We can still take them. They won't risk shooting in a cemetery with civilians around. You're right, Kate agreed. They won't. But I will. Kate's first shot took Razor in the shoulder before he could raise his weapon. Her second shot shattered Psycho's wrist as he tried to grab his gun. Both men screamed and dropped to the ground, clutching their wounds. Viper found himself staring down the barrel of Kate's Glock with 6 FBI agents surrounding him. His revenge mission had become a complete disaster in less than 5 minutes. Drop the weapon, Kate ordered.
Last chance.
Viper looked around at the tactical situation. Wounded partners, overwhelming opposition, no escape routes. Slowly, he placed his pistol on the ground and raised his hands.
Smart choice, Kate said.
Marcus Rodriguez, Jake Collins, Tommy Adams. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, threatening a federal witness, weapons violations, and about a dozen other federal crimes that will put you away for the rest of your lives. As FBI agents moved in to secure the prisoners, Thomas Morrison approached Kate with a mixture of amazement and hurt in his eyes. 3 years, he said quietly. 3 years of marriage, and I never knew who you really were. Kate looked at the man who'd been her cover husband, and for the first time since revealing herself, her expression softened. Thomas, the marriage might have been cover, but the respect and affection I developed for you was real. You're a good man who did the right thing, even when it was dangerous.
What happens now?
Kate looked around the cemetery where her fake funeral had become the final takedown of the Iron Wolves gang. Now justice gets served.
And you get to live the rest of your life without looking over your shoulder.
The woman who'd been dead for 3 days had just proven that sometimes the best way to catch predators is to give them exactly what they think they want. As FBI agents secured the 3 wounded outlaws and called for medical assistance, Kate Morrison, Special Agent Catherine Mills, holstered her weapon and looked around at the elaborate crime scene they'd created. The fake funeral had worked perfectly, but now came the complicated aftermath. Agent Mills, Agent Chen approached with a satisfied expression. Outstanding work. 3 years of deep cover, and you delivered the entire Iron Wolves leadership in one operation. Not the entire leadership, Kate corrected.
We're still missing Danny Reaper Williams.
The gang's president is serving life in federal prison, but he's been coordinating these revenge attacks from his cell. Thomas Morrison stood nearby, still trying to process the revelation that his wife of 3 years was actually an FBI agent who'd faked her death to trap criminals.
Catherine. Agent Mills.
I don't even know what to call you anymore. Kate is fine, she replied gently. That part was real, even if everything else was an assignment.
Everything else. Thomas's voice carried a mix of hurt and confusion.
The marriage, the home we built together, the life we shared. Was any of it real? Kate looked at the man who'd been her cover identity for 3 years. The FBI had chosen Thomas Morrison because he needed protection, but living with him had been more challenging than any undercover assignment she'd ever undertaken. Not because he was difficult, but because he was genuinely good, honest, kind, brave enough to testify against dangerous criminals despite the personal cost. Thomas, the marriage certificate might have been part of a federal operation, but the daily life we built together was as real as I knew how to make it, Kate said carefully. I cooked your meals, tended your garden, attended your daughter's college graduation. I may have been Agent Mills on paper, but for 3 years, I tried to be Kate Morrison in practice. Tried to be. I am Kate Morrison, in every way that matters. The FBI gave me a cover identity, but you gave me a life I'd never experienced before.
A normal life. A peaceful life. Kate's voice grew softer.
Do you know what my previous assignment was before this one?
Thomas shook his head.
5 years undercover with a Mexican cartel. Before that, 2 years infiltrating a domestic terrorism cell. Before that, 18 months with an arms trafficking ring. Kate looked around the cemetery. I've been living with criminals and killers for 12 years, Thomas. You were the first genuinely good person I'd shared a home with since I joined the FBI. Agent Chen interrupted their conversation. Agent Mills, we have a problem.
We intercepted communications from the Iron Wolves prison network.
Reaper Williams knows about the cemetery operation. Kate's expression hardened immediately. How? One of our suspects had a live cell phone connection when the operation went down.
Williams heard everything. Your real identity, the fake death, the whole setup.
What's his response? Chen handed Kate a tablet displaying a transcript of intercepted prison communications. Kate read it and her face went pale.
What is it?
Thomas asked. Reaper Williams has put out a contract on both of us, Kate explained. $500,000 for killing the FBI agent who destroyed his gang.
Another $500,000 for killing the witness who started it all.
But we caught the Iron Wolves.
The threat is over.
We caught 3 Iron Wolves, Kate corrected. Williams has been building a new network from prison. Associates, hired killers, contract criminals who work for money rather than loyalty. The original gang might be finished, but the revenge operation is just beginning. Agent Chun checked her watch. Agent Mills, we need to get you and Mr. Morrison into protective custody immediately. Our intelligence suggests Williams has already activated his hired killers. How long do we have? Unknown. But professional assassins move fast, and they have your real identities now. Kate looked at Thomas, seeing the fear and confusion in his eyes. For 3 years, he believed his testimony had ended the threat against him. Now he was discovering that helping the FBI had painted an even bigger target on his back. I'm sorry, Thomas, Kate said quietly. This isn't how I wanted you to find out the truth.
The truth about what?
The truth about who I really am. The truth about what being married to a federal agent means. The truth about the fact that our quiet life together was always going to end like this. As if summoned by her words, Kate's earpiece crackled with urgent communication from FBI surveillance teams. Agent Mills, we have multiple vehicles approaching the cemetery from different directions. Professional movement patterns. Recommend immediate evacuation. Kate drew her weapon and scanned the tree line.
Thomas, get behind the ears.
Now.
Kate, what's happening?
What's happening is that the Iron Wolves just became the least of our problems. Professional killers are coming, and they don't care about collateral damage. The fake funeral was about to become a very real battle.
Contact, east side.
Agent Chen's voice cut through the cemetery air as muzzle flashes erupted from the tree line. Professional gunmen in tactical gear were advancing on the funeral site with military precision. Kate grabbed Thomas and pulled him behind the solid granite base of a large monument. Stay down and don't move until I tell you.
Agent Mills.
Agent Chen called out, firing back at the advancing killers. We count at least 8 hostiles, professional equipment, coordinated assault pattern. Kate peered around the monument and immediately recognized the tactical movement of the approaching team. These weren't gang members or street criminals. They were military-trained contractors, the kind of people who worked for the highest bidder and asked no questions. This is bigger than just revenge, Kate realized, speaking into her radio. Reaper Williams doesn't have $500,000 for contract killers. Someone else is funding this operation. A new voice crackled through her earpiece, deep, authoritative, and completely unexpected. Agent Catherine Mills, the voice said. This is Deputy Director Frank Harrison, FBI. We have a major problem.
Kate's blood ran cold.
Deputy Director Harrison was her ultimate superior, 5 levels above her in the FBI hierarchy. He didn't communicate directly with field agents unless something catastrophic was happening. Sir, what's the nature of the problem? The problem is that your cover operation has exposed something we didn't expect. The Iron Wolves weren't just a motorcycle gang dealing drugs. They were laundering money for a much larger criminal organization. More gunfire erupted around the cemetery as FBI agents returned fire against the professional killers. Kate could see at least 3 different assault teams positioning themselves around the perimeter.
What kind of organization?
Kate asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer would be worse than she'd imagined.
The Kozlov Syndicate.
Russian organized crime with connections to defense contractors, political figures, and federal law enforcement. Agent Mills, The Iron Wolves were small-time players in a billion-dollar money laundering operation. Kate felt the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. The contract on our lives isn't revenge. It's damage control. Correct. Your 3-year undercover operation accidentally uncovered financial connections that lead directly to some very powerful people. People who can afford professional kill teams and who have access to federal intelligence databases. Thomas Morrison crouched beside Kate, trying to understand what he was hearing. Kate, what's he saying? He's saying that your testimony didn't just expose a motorcycle gang, Kate replied grimly. It started unraveling a criminal conspiracy that reaches into the highest levels of government and business. Deputy Director Harrison's voice continued through the earpiece. Agent Mills, the killers surrounding your position aren't just trying to eliminate witnesses. They're trying to eliminate the last link to evidence that could bring down senators, defense contractors, and corrupt federal officials.
What evidence?
Financial records that Thomas Morrison observed during his interactions with the Iron Wolves. Banking information that he mentioned in his testimony but that we didn't fully investigate at the time. Transactions that connect motorcycle gang drug money to defense contractor accounts. Kate looked at Thomas with new understanding. Thomas, what exactly did you see when you witnessed those Iron Wolves operations? Just drug deals, money changing hands, the usual criminal stuff. Think carefully. Was there anything unusual about the money? The way it was handled, where it came from, who was involved? Thomas frowned, concentrating. Well, there was one thing. Some of the payments weren't cash. They were transfers from bank accounts with very official-looking paperwork. Government forms, defense contractor letterheads. Which contractors? Morrison Defense Systems, Blackwater Securities, a few others I didn't recognize. Kate's heart stopped. Morrison Defense Systems was a major Pentagon contractor worth billions. If they were laundering money through motorcycle gangs, it meant corruption at the highest levels of the defense establishment. Agent Mills, Deputy Director Harrison's voice was urgent now. You need to extract Thomas Morrison immediately. He's not just a witness to gang activity. He's a witness to defense contractor money laundering that involves classified military projects. Sir, we're surrounded by professional killers. Extraction isn't possible. Kate looked around the cemetery where her fake funeral had become a real battlefield. FBI agents were pinned down behind monuments while professional killers advanced with military equipment and tactics. Thomas, she said quietly, I need you to understand something. The quiet life we built together, the normal marriage we had, it's over. From this moment forward, we're both federal targets with prices on our heads. For how long? Kate checked her ammunition and prepared for the fight of her life. Until we expose the people behind this conspiracy, or until they kill us trying. The woman who'd been dead for 3 days was about to discover that sometimes staying alive is much harder than dying. The professional kill team had the cemetery surrounded, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated Agent Catherine Mills. While they saw a federal agent caught in an impossible situation, Kate saw a tactical environment she could exploit. Agent Chen, Kate called through her radio, I need covering fire for 30 seconds. I'm going to flank their eastern position.
Negative. Agent Mills. Too much open ground.
You'll be exposed. Not if I use the cemetery's drainage system. Kate had spent 3 years living in this community, walking through this cemetery during her cover marriage to Thomas Morrison. She knew every monument, every tree, and most importantly, every storm drain and maintenance tunnel that ran beneath the grounds. Thomas, listen carefully, Kate said, checking her weapon.
In 60 seconds, I want you to run to the groundscapes shed behind the mausoleum.
There's a maintenance entrance to the underground tunnels.
Wait for me there.
Kate, I'm not leaving you to fight these people alone.
You're not leaving me to fight.
You're giving me freedom to fight without worrying about your safety.
Kate has voice carried the authority of Someone accustomed to life or death situations. Thomas, I need you alive.
You're the only witness who can connect the financial evidence to the defense contractors. Before Thomas could argue further, Kate was moving. She sprinted toward a large marble monument, using it as cover while she accessed a hidden storm drain entrance. Within seconds, she disappeared underground, leaving the professional killers wondering where their primary target had gone. The tunnel system beneath Riverside Cemetery was part of the original 1920s construction, designed to handle drainage during heavy rains. Kate moved through the narrow concrete passages with tactical precision, counting steps and calculating distances based on her knowledge of the cemetery layout above. She emerged behind the Eastern Assault Team just as they were preparing to advance on the FBI agent's position. 3 men in military-grade tactical gear, armed with assault rifles and professional equipment. They never saw her coming. Kate's first shot dropped the team leader before he could react. Her second shot wounded the communications specialist, cutting off their coordination with the other teams. The third gunman spun toward her, but Kate was already moving, using gravestones as cover while she repositioned for a better angle. "Control, this is Team 3, the wounded specialist called into his radio. "We have a problem. Target is mobile and extremely hostile. This is not a civilian witness." Through her earpiece, Kate heard Deputy Director Harrison's voice. "Agent Mills, satellite surveillance shows 4 more vehicles approaching from the north. You have approximately 3 minutes before reinforcements arrive." Kate keyed her radio. "Understood, sir."
How many total hostiles?
"At least 20, possibly more. Agent Mills, these aren't just contract killers. Satellite imagery suggests they're using former military special forces personnel. Someone with serious resources is funding this operation." As if to confirm Harrison's assessment, Kate heard the distinctive sound of helicopter rotors approaching. But instead of FBI support, she saw a black military-style chopper descending toward the cemetery with additional tactical teams aboard. "This is getting ridiculous," Kate muttered, then spoke into her radio. "All agents, prepare for immediate evacuation. We're about to be seriously outnumbered." "Agent Mills," came a new voice through her earpiece, cold, professional, and speaking with a slight Russian accent.
This is Dmitry Kozlov.
"I believe you have something that belongs to me." Kate felt ice form in her stomach. Dmitry Kozlov was the head of the Russian syndicate that Deputy Director Harrison had mentioned. If he was personally involved in this operation, it meant the stakes were even higher than she'd realized. "Mr. Kozlov," Kate replied, taking cover behind a large monument. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about. You have a witness who observed financial transactions connecting my business associates to certain defense contractors. That witness needs to disappear, along with anyone who might have heard his testimony." "So this is about money laundering. This is about a $2 billion operation that funds activities your government would find very embarrassing. Defense contractors, political campaigns, weapons shipments to places that officially don't exist." Kate realized the full scope of what Thomas Morrison had accidentally witnessed. Not just motorcycle gang crime, but a massive international conspiracy involving defense contractors, political corruption, and foreign intelligence operations. "Unfortunately," Kozlov continued, "your fake funeral has created complications that require permanent solutions."
Nothing personal, Agent Mills. Simply business.
Kate looked toward the groundskeeper's shed where Thomas was hiding, then at the helicopter landing in the cemetery with additional killers. The FBI agents were outnumbered, outgunned, and about to be overrun by professional military contractors. But Catherine Mills had spent 12 years in undercover operations, and she'd never failed to complete a mission. She wasn't about to start now. "Mr. Kozlov," Kate said into her radio, "you made one mistake in your planning." "What mistake would that be?" "You assumed that Agent Catherine Mills was the most dangerous person in this cemetery." Kate smiled grimly and activated a hidden device she'd been carrying for 3 years. Not FBI equipment, but something much more specialized. "But I'm not Agent Mills right now. I'm Kate Morrison, loving wife and devoted community member. And you just threatened my family." The device she'd activated wasn't a standard FBI emergency beacon. It was a direct communication link to a very special military unit that handled threats against deep-cover federal agents. In the distance, Kate could hear the sound of different helicopters approaching, Black Hawks with U.S. military markings. Sometimes the best way to handle international criminals is to remind them that America takes care of its own. The sound of approaching U.S. military helicopters changed everything. Dmitry Kozlov's professional kill teams suddenly found themselves facing not just FBI agents, but a full military response that they hadn't planned for. "Control, we have a problem," one of the tactical team leaders reported through intercepted communications.
Military aircraft inbound.
This operation is compromised. Kate smiled grimly as she watched 4 Black Hawk helicopters. What would that be, Agent Mills? Kate Morrison isn't just a fake name. It's my real name. Catherine Mills is my maiden name from before I joined the FBI.
Kate is a voice carried da Dangerous Edge. And my father is General Robert Morrison, US Army Special Operations Command.
The silence on the radio told Kate that Kozlov was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. You see, Kate continued, when you threaten a federal agent, you get FBI response. But when you threaten a general's daughter with military weapons on American soil, you get a very different kind of response. The first Black Hawk touched down 50 yards from Kate's position, and 12 heavily armed soldiers in full combat gear emerged. These weren't standard military personnel. They were Delta Force operators with authorization to engage foreign threats on domestic soil. Agent Morrison, the team leader, called out, using Kate's real name.
Colonel James Patterson, Delta Force.
Your father sends his regards. Kate felt relief flood through her as she realized the cavalry had truly arrived. Colonel, we have approximately 20 hostile contractors conducting an illegal paramilitary operation. Primary target is federal witness Thomas Morrison, currently secured in the groundskeeper's shed.
Understood.
We have authorization to neutralize foreign combatants threatening federal personnel on U.S. soil. The tide of battle shifted immediately. Kozlov's professional killers found themselves facing military operators who were better trained, better equipped, and operating under rules of engagement that allowed them to treat the situation as a foreign attack on American territory. All hostile units, this is U.S. Army Delta Force, Colonel Patterson announced through loudspeakers. You are conducting illegal military operations on American soil. Surrender immediately or face lethal force. The response was immediate gunfire from multiple positions. The professional contractors had decided to fight rather than surrender, which proved to be their final mistake. Delta Force operators moved through the cemetery with precision that made the contractors look like amateurs. Within 10 minutes, the entire hostile force was either dead, wounded, or surrendering. Kate emerged from cover as the last shots faded away. The cemetery that had been a peaceful funeral site just hours earlier was now a battlefield littered with the bodies of international criminals. Agent Morrison, Colonel Patterson approached. Your father wanted me to tell you that he's proud of your work, but he's also concerned about your choice of undercover assignments. Kate laughed despite everything. Tell him that this is the last time I fake my own death for a federal operation. Thomas Morrison emerged from the groundskeeper's shed, looking shell-shocked by the military operation that had just taken place around him.
Kate. Agent Morrison, who are you really?
I'm exactly who I told you I was, Kate replied. I'm a federal agent who's been protecting you for 3 years. I'm also the daughter of a man who doesn't appreciate foreign criminals threatening his family. Family. Kate looked at Thomas, the man who'd been her cover husband but had become much more than that during their 3 years together. Thomas, the marriage might have started as a federal operation, but somewhere along the way, it became real for me. You're not just a witness I was protecting.
You're someone uno care about.
Agent Chen approached with a satellite phone. Agent Morrison, Deputy Director Harrison wants to speak with you. Kate took the phone.
Sir. Outstanding work, Agent Morrison.
Kozlov's operation has been completely neutralized, and we've recovered financial records that will bring down the entire money laundering network. Defense contractors, political figures, foreign intelligence assets. This is the biggest corruption case in federal history.
What happens to Thomas Morrison?
Mr. Morrison will receive full federal protection and a substantial reward for his role in exposing international criminal conspiracy. His testimony will be crucial in the prosecutions to follow.
And Agent Catherine Mills?
Agent Mills died 3 days ago, remember? But Agent Kate Morrison is being promoted to Senior Special Agent and assigned to the FBI's International Corruption Task Force. Kate looked around the cemetery where her fake funeral had become the takedown of a massive criminal conspiracy.
Sir, I'd like to request something. What is that, Agent Morrison?
I'd like Thomas Morrison assigned as a protected witness consultant to my task force. His expertise in identifying financial irregularities could be valuable in future operations. Kate looked at Thomas and saw understanding dawn in his eyes. She was offering him a choice: return to his quiet life as a protected witness, or join her in continuing the fight against international criminals. "Kate," Thomas said quietly, "are you asking me to work with the FBI? I'm asking if you want to help us make sure that what happened today never happens to another family." Kate's voice was gentle but serious. "Thomas, you have a gift for noticing things that other people miss. That's what made you a valuable witness, and it's what could make you a valuable consultant." Thomas looked at the woman who'd been his wife for 3 years, then at the battle-scarred cemetery around them. "Will there be more fake funerals?" Kate smiled. "Probably not. But there will definitely be more criminals who think they're smarter than federal law enforcement. And more Russians with private armies? Hopefully fewer of those." Thomas considered the offer, then looked at Kate with newfound respect and affection. "Agent Morrison, it would be my honor to work with you." As cleanup crews arrived and the last of Kozlov's men were taken into custody, Kate reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in a single day. She'd started the morning as a dead FBI agent completing an undercover operation. She was ending it as herself, Kate Morrison, daughter of a general, federal agent, and partner to a man who'd proven himself worthy of the most dangerous truths. Sometimes the best cover stories become real life. And sometimes fake funerals lead to very real new beginnings. 6 months later, Agent Kate Morrison stood before a joint session of Congress, delivering testimony that would reshape how America fought international organized crime. The Morrison Defense Systems investigation had exposed corruption involving 12 defense contractors, 7 senators, and 3 Pentagon officials, resulting in the largest criminal conspiracy prosecution in U.S. history. "Agent Morrison," the committee chairman asked, "can you explain how a simple motorcycle gang investigation became an international criminal conspiracy case?" "It started with an observant witness who noticed financial irregularities that others missed," Kate replied, glancing at Thomas Morrison in the gallery. "Sometimes the most important intelligence comes from ordinary citizens who have the courage to report what they see." What Kate didn't tell Congress was that her ordinary citizen witness had become much more than that. Thomas Morrison was now a senior consultant with the FBI's International Corruption Task Force, using his talent for financial pattern recognition to identify money laundering operations around the world. Their professional partnership had also become personal again. 6 months after the cemetery battle, they'd remarried, this time without any federal cover stories or fake identities. Just Kate Morrison and Thomas Morrison, 2 people who'd found each other in the middle of an impossible situation and decided to build something real from the wreckage of their fake life. The Morrison case demonstrates something crucial about modern organized crime, Kate continued her testimony. International criminal organizations aren't just dealing drugs or running protection rackets anymore. They're infiltrating legitimate businesses, corrupting government officials, and using our own financial systems to fund activities that threaten national security. After her congressional testimony, Kate walked out of the Capitol building to find Thomas waiting with a smile and a cup of coffee, the same way he'd greeted her every morning during their 3 years of cover marriage. "How did it go?" he asked. 12 defense contractors under federal investigation, 47 arrests across 3 countries, and approximately $2 billion in recovered assets, Kate replied. "I'd say it went well."
"And the Kozlov Syndicate?"
"Dmitry Kozlov is serving life in federal prison without possibility of parole. His organization has been completely dismantled." Kate took the coffee gratefully. The cemetery operation turned out to be the key to unraveling their entire network. They walked through downtown Washington together, looking like any other married couple enjoying an afternoon together. But their conversation revealed the extraordinary reality of their lives. "Any word on our next assignment?" Thomas asked. "Actually, yes. There's a situation in Nevada involving a motorcycle gang that's been laundering money for Eastern European arms dealers."
"Sound familiar?" Thomas laughed.
"Do I get to fake my death this time?" "No more fake deaths for either of us. But you might have to pretend to be a corrupt accountant." "I can work with that." Their phone buzzed simultaneously with an encrypted message from FBI headquarters. New intelligence suggests Morrison Defense Systems corruption was part of larger weapons trafficking operation. Immediate briefing required. Kate and Thomas looked at each other with a shared understanding of partners who'd learned to trust each other completely in the most dangerous situations.
"Ready to save the world again?"
Kate asked. With you. Always. As they headed back to FBI headquarters, Kate reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought them to this point. A fake funeral had exposed real corruption. A cover marriage had become genuine love. And a dead woman had found a life worth living. 3 months later, their story had become legend within federal law enforcement circles. The cemetery operation was taught at the FBI Academy as an example of how undercover operations could evolve beyond their original parameters. Agent Kate Morrison had become one of the Bureau's most decorated investigators, and Thomas Morrison had become the civilian consultant that every task force wanted to work with. But their most important achievement wasn't professional recognition or criminal convictions. It was proving that sometimes the most authentic relationships grow from the most artificial circumstances. The woman who'd risen from her own coffin to fight international criminals had discovered something more valuable than any case closure. A partner who understood that love and duty weren't contradictory forces, but complementary strengths that made them both more effective at protecting the innocent and pursuing justice. In a small office at FBI headquarters, Agent Kate Morrison kept a single memento from the cemetery operation, a program from her fake funeral, signed by all the agents who'd participated in the sting. Across the bottom, someone had written, "To Agent Morrison, thank you for proving that sometimes the best way to come back to life is to first be willing to die for something that matters." Kate smiled every time she read it, knowing that she'd found something worth living for instead. This incredible story proves that truth can be stranger than fiction, and that sometimes the most elaborate deceptions reveal the most authentic truths. Kate Morrison's journey from fake death to real life shows us that courage comes in many forms. Sometimes it's the bravery to testify against criminals, and sometimes it's the willingness to trust someone whose entire identity was a lie. If this story moved you, remember, the most dangerous people are often the ones who appear most harmless, and the most trustworthy people are sometimes the ones who've learned to lie convincingly for the right reasons. Heroes don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they rise from coffins when justice needs defending. Subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share this with someone who believes that love and duty can coexist, that justice is worth fighting for, and that sometimes the best families are forged in the heat of battle against those who threaten the innocent.